I was 6 the first time I watched someone disappear. They told us she'd been moved to advanced training. We believed them because we had to. By the time I understood what the tests were really for, I was already helping administer them. That's how they win. They don't just study you. They turn you into the experiment. I don't remember learning to walk. I remember the floor smooth, cold, the kind of surface that never forgave a fall. I remember hands steadying me, voices above my head using words I didn't have yet. I remember the lights, always the same pale yellow, humming in a way that made my teeth ache before I knew what an ache was. They told me my name was 14. Later, when I was older, they said it was because I was born on the 14th day of the month, but I don't think that's true. I think it's because I was the 14th child that year. I think the others had numbers too, but we never talked about it. The vault was everything. The walls were painted blue in the residential wing, green in the mess hall, white in the medical bay. The colors didn't mean anything except where you were. We learned the layout before we learned to read left at the blue junction, straight past the hydroponics bay, right where the vent hums louder. You didn't get lost. Getting lost meant you weren't paying attention, and not paying attention meant a meeting with Supervisor Crane, who smiled when she spoke, but never with her eyes. My mother worked in maintenance. I think she did. I have a memory of her in grey coveralls, grease under her nails, hair tied back so tight it pulled at the corners of her eyes. She used to hum while she worked, something tuneless and low, and I'd sit on the floor of whatever corridor she was fixing and watch her hands move. She never explained what she was doing. No one explained anything unless you were old enough for classroom instruction, and by then, the explanations were always the same. Protocols, safety measures, resource conservation. The vault provides. The vault protects. I remember the first time I noticed the cameras. I must have been 5, maybe 6. I was in the common room, playing with blocks, red plastic cubes that clicked together and came apart with a soft pop. I looked up and saw the lens in the corner of the ceiling, a black bubble encased in metal, and I stared at it until one of the older kids told me to stop being weird. I asked him what it was. He said it was for safety. I asked him what safety meant. He didn't answer. After that, I saw them everywhere. In the dormitories, the bathrooms, the classrooms. Small black eyes watching from corners and corridors, never blinking. I asked my mother about them once, while she was fixing a panel near our bunk. She didn't look up. She said they were there to make sure everyone was safe. I asked her who was watching. She said the overseer. I asked her if the overseer ever slept. She told me to go find something to do. The routines were everything. Wake at 6, wash at the communal sinks 3 minutes, cold water only, rationed soap that smelled like antiseptic and left your skin tight. Breakfast at 6:30. The same meal every day. Oatmeal, a protein bar, a cup of water. The oatmeal was grey and tasted like paste. The protein bar was brown and tasted like chalk. The water tasted like metal. You ate what you were given. You didn't complain. Complaining meant you didn't appreciate the vault's provisions. And not appreciating meant a demerit. 3 demerits in a week meant extra labor shifts. 6 meant a meeting with Supervisor Crane. I got my first demerit when I was 7. I'd left my tray in the mess hall instead of taking it to the wash station. It was an accident. I'd been distracted by something, maybe one of the other kids, maybe the way the lights flickered when the ventilation system cycled. I don't remember. What I remember is the way Crane looked at me when she told me, her voice flat and patient, like she was explaining something simple to someone slow. She said the vault functioned because everyone contributed. She said small failures compounded into systemic breakdowns. She said I was better than that. I nodded. I didn't cry. Crying in front of Crane felt dangerous, though I couldn't have said why. The lessons were simple at first. Numbers, letters, basic mechanics. We learned to read using maintenance manuals. We learned math by calculating water rations and energy output. We learned history from holotapes that showed the world before the bomb cities full of light, people in clean clothes, skies that weren't the color of ash. The teacher, Mr. Halloway, would pause the tapes and ask us questions. What did these people do wrong? Why did they fail? What could they have done differently? We learned that the world above had destroyed itself through greed, ignorance, and poor resource management. We learned that we were the future. We learned that the vault was a second chance. I believed it. We all did. When I was 8, they started the tests. They called them aptitude assessments, but everyone just called them the tests. Once a month, we'd be pulled from class or mealtime or sleep and brought to a small white room with a table, 2 chairs, and a terminal. The questions changed every time. Sometimes they were about math or logic. Sometimes they were about ethics if 2 people needed medicine and there was only enough for one, who should get it. Sometimes they were about observation. They'd show you a picture of a room and ask you to describe everything you remembered. Sometimes there were no questions at all. They'd just leave you in the room for an hour and watch. I didn't mind the tests at first. They were easier than the regular lessons, and you got out of whatever shift you were assigned that day. But after a while, I started noticing things. Kids who did well on the tests got moved to different dormitories. They ate at different times. They had different teachers. One girl, Claire, used to sleep in the bunk next to mine. She was good at the memory. Tests could recall every detail of a picture after seeing it for 10 seconds. One day she took a test and didn't come back to the dorm. I saw her a week later in the corridor near the overseer's office. She looked at me, but didn't say anything. Her eyes were different, flatter. I asked Mr. Halloway where kids went when they moved dormitories. He said they were being given advanced training. I asked him what kind of training. He said it depended on their aptitudes. I asked if I could get advanced training. He looked at me for a long time, then said maybe, if I kept working hard. I didn't ask again. When I was 10, my mother stopped coming back to the bunk. I woke up one morning and her bed was empty, the blanket folded in a tight square, her locker cleaned out. I asked the dorm supervisor where she was. He said she'd been reassigned to a different shift rotation. I asked when I'd see her. He said that depended on scheduling. I didn't see her again for 3 months. When I finally did, it was in the mess hall during a meal overlap. She was thinner, her hair was cut short. She looked at me the way you'd look at someone you used to know but couldn't quite place. I started to walk toward her, but one of the other workers touched her arm and said something, and she turned away. I didn't try to talk to her after that. The older we got, the more the vault changed. Or maybe it didn't change at all. Maybe we just started seeing it. They introduced new protocols when I was 11. Mandatory exercise periods, 2 hours a day in the gymnasium, running laps or lifting weights or doing drills that had no clear purpose. They said it was for our health. They said strong bodies meant strong minds. But the exercises were always watched, always timed, always recorded. If you didn't meet the benchmarks, you got extra sessions. If you exceeded them, you got moved to a different group. I stayed in the middle. I learned that being average was safer than being exceptional. They changed the food, too. The oatmeal started tasting different, sweeter one week, bitter the next. The protein bars changed texture. Sometimes they were soft, almost crumbly. Sometimes they were hard enough to hurt your teeth. No one said anything about it. You ate what you were given. I started having trouble sleeping. The lights in the dormitory never turned off completely. They dimmed to a low blue glow that made everything look underwater. The ventilation system hummed at a frequency that made my skull itch. I'd lie awake and listen to the other kids breathing, their rhythms uneven, some of them muttering in their sleep. I wondered if they were dreaming. I wondered what they dreamed about. One night, I heard crying, soft, muffled, coming from the bunk across from mine. It was a boy named Marcus, younger than me by a year or 2. I didn't know him well. He kept to himself, never caused trouble, always did what he was told. I almost called out to him, almost asked if he was okay, but something stopped me. The cameras. The way the red lights blinked in the corners, the way sound carried in the vault. I stayed quiet. The crying stopped after a while. In the morning, Marcus's bunk was empty. I asked the supervisor where he'd gone. She said he'd been transferred to medical observation. I asked why. She said it wasn't my concern. I never saw Marcus again. The tests got harder. They started asking questions that didn't have right answers. If the Vault's life support system failed and you could only save 10 people, how would you choose? If someone broke a rule to help another person, should they be punished? If you saw someone doing something against protocol, would you report them? I learned to answer the way I thought they wanted me to answer. I learned to watch their faces when I spoke, to adjust my words based on whether they nodded or stayed still. I learned that honesty was less important than consistency. They started pulling kids out of class for special sessions. No one talked about what happened in the sessions. You'd be called over the intercom, told to report to a specific room, and you'd go. Sometimes you'd be gone for an hour, sometimes a whole day. When you came back, you didn't talk about it. If someone asked, you'd say it was fine. You'd say it was just more tests. After a while, people stopped asking. I got called for a special session when I was 13. The room was small, windowless, lit by a single overhead lamp that made everything look washed out. There was a chair, a table, and a woman I didn't recognize. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun, glasses perched on the end of her nose, a clipboard in her lap. She smiled when I sat down. She asked me how I was feeling. I said fine. She asked if I was happy in the vault. I said yes. She asked if I ever thought about the world above. I said no. She wrote something on her clipboard. She asked if I trusted the overseer. I said yes. She asked if I'd ever had thoughts about leaving. I said no. She asked if I'd ever questioned the rules. I said no. She asked if I was lying. I said no. She stared at me for a long time, her pen hovering over the paper. Then she smiled again and told me I could go. I didn't sleep that night. When I was 14, my actual 14th year, not my name, they started the social experiments. They called them community integration exercises, but that's not what they were. They'd rearrange the dormitories without warning, splitting up kids who'd known each other for years, mixing age groups, changing roommates every few weeks. They said it was to promote adaptability. They said it built resilience. But what it really did was make sure no one got too close to anyone. You'd start to trust someone, start to talk to them, and then they'd be gone, move to a different wing, a different shift, a different life. They changed the lights too. Some days, the corridors would be brighter than usual, the white glare making your eyes ache. Other days, they'd be dim, almost dark, and you'd have to feel your way along the walls. They said it was maintenance. They said the generators were being adjusted. But it happened too often, too regularly, to be random. The food kept changing. Some weeks, we'd get extra rations, more protein, more vegetables, even dessert once in a while. Other weeks, the portions would shrink, the meals so small you'd finish them in 3 bites and still be hungry. They never explained why. You didn't ask. Asking meant you were ungrateful. I started noticing the patterns. The lights would get brighter the week before a round of tests. The food would improve after someone disappeared. The dormitory changes always happened on Thursdays. I didn't write any of this down. Writing things down felt dangerous. But I kept track in my head, building a map of cause and effect, trying to find the logic beneath the surface. I don't think there was any logic. I think the randomness was the point. When I was 15, they introduced the pairing system. Every resident over the age of 14 was assigned a partner, someone you'd work with, eat with, share a schedule with. They said it was to build cooperation. They said it reflected how communities functioned. They didn't say you didn't get to choose your partner. They didn't say the partnerships would change every 6 months. My first partner was a girl named Elise. She was quiet, methodical, good at following instructions. We barely spoke. We'd sit across from each other in the mess hall, eat in silence, and then go our separate ways. After 3 months, she started losing weight. Her hands shook when she held her tray. She'd stare at her food without eating it, and I'd watch her from across the table, wondering if I should say something. I never did. One morning, she didn't show up to breakfast. I asked the supervisor where she was. He said she'd been transferred to medical. I asked if she was okay. He said that wasn't my concern. They assigned me a new partner that afternoon, a boy named Derek, who talked too much and laughed too loud and got reassigned after 2 weeks. I went through 4 partners that year. I stopped learning their names. The lessons changed, too. They stopped teaching us history. They stopped teaching us anything that wasn't directly related to vault maintenance. We learned plumbing, electrical work, water purification, food cultivation. We learned how to fix things, how to ration things, how to make things last. They said we were preparing for the future. They said we were learning to be self-sufficient. But the lessons felt hollow, like we were being taught to maintain a machine we'd never fully understand. Mr. Halloway stopped teaching around that time. I don't know if he left or if he was reassigned or if something happened to him. One day he was there, and the next day he wasn't. The new teacher, Miss Voss, was younger, sharper, less patient. She didn't answer questions. She didn't pause the holotapes. She just played them and took notes while we watched. I started having dreams about the world above. Not the world from the holotapes, not the clean cities and bright skies. I dreamed about ruins, empty streets choked with dust, buildings split open like broken teeth, skies the color of old blood. I'd walk through the wreckage, alone, and the silence would press down on me like weight. I'd wake up gasping, my chest tight, my hands clenched in the sheets. The other kids in the dorm never stirred. I wondered if they dreamed at all. When I was 16, they started the final tests. They didn't call them that, but everyone knew. These weren't like the aptitude assessments or the special sessions. These were longer, harder, more invasive. They'd take you to a room and leave you there for hours with nothing but a terminal and a series of scenarios. Some were practical fix, a broken valve, reroute a power line, calculate resource distribution. Some were ethical, choose who lives, who dies, who gets saved, who gets sacrificed. Some were psychological answer, the same question 100 different ways. Describe your earliest memory. Explain why you deserve to survive. I learned to lie. Not obvious lies, those would show up on whatever metrics they were tracking. Small lies, careful lies. I'd tell them what they wanted to hear, phrased in a way that sounded like the truth. I'd describe loyalty and gratitude and purpose, and I'd watch the interviewers nod and make their notes, and I'd walk out of the room feeling emptier than when I went in. The vault started to feel smaller. The corridors felt narrower. The ceilings felt lower. The air tasted stale, recycled too many times, scrubbed of anything that wasn't strictly necessary. I'd stand in the common room and look at the other residents' kids I'd grown up with, people I'd known my entire life, and I didn't recognize them. Their faces were blank. Their movements were mechanical. They spoke in the same rhythms, used the same phrases, laughed at the same jokes. We'd all become copies of each other, smoothed down and interchangeable. I started to understand that the vault wasn't protecting us, it was shaping us. I don't know when I realized I was part of an experiment. Maybe I'd always known, on some level. Maybe the knowledge had been there all along, buried under layers of routine and obedience and fear. But there was a moment I can't pinpoint exactly when, where everything clicked into place. The tests, the cameras, the constant changes, the way people disappeared and no one questioned it. The way we were observed, measured, catalogued. We weren't residents, we were data. I thought about confronting someone, asking Supervisor Crane directly, demanding to see the overseer. But what would I say? What proof did I have? And even if I was right, what would change? The vault was sealed. The world above was dead. There was nowhere to go. Nothing to do but keep moving through the routines. Keep pretending everything was normal. So I did. I kept going to the tests. I kept answering the questions. I kept eating the food, sleeping in the bunks, following the schedules. I watched the other kids disappear, one by one, transferred to medical or advanced training or some other place I'd never see. I watched new kids arrive, younger, wide-eyed, full of the same trust I used to have. I watched them learn the routines, learn the rules, learn to stop asking questions. When I was 17, they told me I was being promoted. I'd be moving to a supervisory role, helping manage the younger residents, assisting with training protocols, supporting vault operations. They said it was an honor. They said it reflected my aptitude and dedication. They didn't say I'd be doing the same things Crane had done to me. They didn't say I'd be watching kids take tests I knew were designed to break them. I accepted the role. What else could I do? The first time I administered a test, I felt sick. The kid, a boy, maybe 12, sat across from me, nervous, eager to please. I asked him the questions from the script. I watched him struggle with the answers. I made notes on my clipboard, checking boxes, recording data. When he left, I sat alone in that white room and stared at the terminal screen until my eyes burned. I kept doing it. Week after week, month after month. I tested them, observed them, reported on them. I watched them crack under the pressure, or adapt to it, or disappear entirely. I became part of the machine I'd spent years trying to understand. The work became routine. I'd wake at 6, same as always. Wash at the communal sinks, eat the same breakfast, attend the same briefings. Then I'd go to the testing rooms and cycle through the kids. Ask the questions, record the answers, file the reports. Sometimes I'd see something in their eyes, a flicker of doubt, a moment of recognition, and I'd wonder if they were starting to understand what I had. But I never said anything. I never hinted. I just kept going. They trained me in other duties too. Observation protocols, behavioral analysis, crisis management. The Vault had procedures for everything: what to do if someone became violent, what to do if someone tried to harm themselves, what to do if someone refused to comply. The procedures were detailed, methodical, designed to minimize disruption and maintain order. I memorized them all. I saw my mother once more, a few months after my promotion. She was in the medical wing, sitting in a chair by the window, a fake window, just a screen showing a loop of pre-war sky. She looked old. Her hair was completely gray, her hands trembled in her lap. I stood in the doorway and waited for her to notice me. She never did. I don't know if she couldn't see me, or if she just didn't recognize me anymore. I didn't go back. The new kids kept coming. Every year, there'd be a fresh group: infants, born in the medical bay, handed over to the nursery staff, raised in the same routines I'd been raised in. I'd watch them grow up through the surveillance feeds, see them take their first tests, see them start to understand the shape of their lives. Some of them reminded me of myself. Others reminded me of Marcus, or Claire, or Elise. I wondered how many of them would make it to my age. I wondered how many would end up sitting in rooms like mine, asking questions they already knew the answers to. I started noticing details I'd missed before. The way the cameras would linger on certain residents longer than others. The way certain test results would trigger immediate reassignments. The way some kids would be flagged for additional observation based on criteria I couldn't quite parse. There were patterns within patterns, systems beneath systems, and I was only seeing a fraction of it. I requested access to the full research data once. Just once. I submitted the request through the proper channels, cited my supervisory role, explained that it would help me better understand the protocols I was implementing. The request was denied within an hour. No explanation, just a note in my file that said, "Access not authorized." I didn't ask again. When I was 18, they brought me to the overseer's office. I'd never been inside before. It was larger than I expected, filled with terminals and filing cabinets and monitors showing every corridor, every room, every corner of the vault. The overseer was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm, measured voice. He shook my hand. He told me I'd exceeded expectations. He told me I was proof the program worked. I asked him what the program was. He smiled. He said I already knew. I did. He explained it anyway. The Vault was a social experiment, designed to test human adaptability under controlled conditions. Every resident was a variable. Every change, every test, every reassignment, it was all data. The goal was to determine how much pressure a population could endure before fracturing, how much control was necessary to maintain stability, how to engineer compliance without overt coercion. He said the results would be invaluable. He said they'd help rebuild civilization. I asked him what happened to the people who failed the tests. He said they were transferred to other projects. He said their data was still useful. He said nothing was wasted. I asked him if anyone had ever left the vault. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said no. He said the vault door had been sealed since before I was born. He said it would stay sealed for another 50 years, minimum, maybe longer. He said that was part of the experiment, to testing how a population would respond to permanent isolation, to the knowledge that there was no escape, no alternative, no future except the one the vault provided. I asked him what would happen when the experiment ended. He said it wouldn't end. He said the data would be transmitted to other facilities, other researchers, other vaults. He said we were part of something larger than ourselves. He said our sacrifices mattered. I asked him if I'd failed. He said no. He said I was exactly what they'd hoped to create. He said I'd demonstrated remarkable adaptability, emotional regulation, and capacity for compliance. He said I was a model resident. He said I should be proud. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to tear the monitors off the walls and smash the terminals and burn the whole vault to the ground. But I didn't. I stood there, hands at my sides, face blank, and I nodded. He told me I'd be staying on as a supervisor. He told me my role was critical to the program's continuation. He told me there would be opportunities for advancement if I continued to perform well. He told me I'd done well. I thanked him. He asked if I had any other questions. I said no. He said good. He said I could go. I walked back to my quarters through the blue corridors, past the cameras, past the other residents going about their routines. No one looked at me. No one ever looked at anyone. That night, I lay in my bunk and stared at the ceiling. The blue lights hummed, the ventilation system cycled. Someone in another bunk was breathing unevenly, maybe crying, maybe just dreaming. I thought about the door. The sealed door, somewhere deep in the vault, locked and monitored, and impossible to reach. I thought about what was on the other side. Radiation, ruins, death. Or maybe nothing at all. Maybe the world above had healed. Maybe there were people up there, living in the sun, breathing real air. Maybe the vault had been sealed not to protect us, but to contain us. I thought about Marcus, about Claire, about Elise, about my mother sitting in the medical wing, staring at a fake sky, about all the kids I'd tested, all the reports I'd filed, all the data I'd helped collect. I thought about what I'd become, what they'd made me. I thought about fighting back, sabotaging the systems, spreading the truth, organizing the others. But the others didn't want to be organized. They wanted to be safe. They wanted to believe the vault was protecting them. And maybe it was. Maybe protection and control were the same thing. Maybe there was no difference. I thought about killing myself. It would be easy. There were protocols for that, 2 procedures for handling self-harm, for cleaning up the mess, for filing the reports. My death would be another data point, another variable in the experiment. It wouldn't change anything, so I didn't. I got up the next morning. I washed at the communal sinks. I ate the grey oatmeal and the brown protein bar and drank the metallic water. I went to the testing rooms. I asked the questions. I recorded the answers. I filed the reports. I've been a supervisor for 2 years now. The work hasn't changed. The routines haven't changed. The vault hasn't changed. Or maybe it has, in small ways I can't quite see. Maybe the experiments are getting more refined. Maybe the controls are getting tighter. Maybe they're learning how to break us more efficiently. I test the new kids, the ones who still believe the vault is keeping them safe. I ask them the same questions I was asked. I watch them struggle, adapt, break. Some of them remind me of myself at that age, eager, compliant, desperate to belong. Some of them are smarter, they see through it faster. Those ones don't last long. There's a girl now, maybe 13, named Seven. She takes the tests without complaint, answers every question correctly, follows every protocol. But there's something in her eyes when she looks at the cameras, a kind of cold understanding. I think she knows. I think she's known for a while. I think she's doing exactly what I did playing the role, staying average, trying to survive. I want to warn her. I want to tell her it doesn't matter, that surviving just means becoming part of the system, that there's no escape. But I don't. I just ask her the questions and record her answers and file my reports. Sometimes I think about the overseer's words, that I'm exactly what they hope to create, that I'm a model resident, that I should be proud. I think he's right. I am what they made me. I know the routines. I follow the rules. I don't ask questions. I don't fight back. I survive by becoming what the Vault needs me to be, and I hate myself for it, and I keep doing it anyway because there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no other version of myself I can access. The Vault provides. The Vault protects. And I provide. And I protect. I administer the tests. I observe the residents. I maintain the protocols. I file the reports. I watch the cameras. I track the patterns. I become the thing I once feared, and I do it willingly, because the alternative is to break, and breaking means disappearing, and disappearing means becoming data without even the illusion of agency. Sometimes I see my reflection in the terminal screens. I look like Crane did when I was 7, tired, blank, going through motions that lost their meaning years ago. I wonder if she knew. I wonder if she hated it as much as I do. I wonder if it matters. The new kids keep coming, the tests keep running, the data keeps accumulating, the Vault keeps humming, its systems cycling, its cameras watching, its doors sealed. And somewhere, in a room I'll never see, someone is watching me on a monitor, taking notes, checking boxes, recording data. I wonder if they're proud. I wonder if they know what they've done. I wonder if they care. The answer, I think, is no, because caring would make them like me, and people like me don't make it to positions where they can run experiments. People like me just survive them. Seven had her final test yesterday. She answered every question perfectly. She showed no signs of distress, no hesitation, no doubt. She's been approved for supervisory training. In a few months, she'll be sitting where I sit, asking the questions I ask, filing the reports I file. I watched her walk out of the testing room, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was nothing in her expression, no recognition, no accusation, no plea, just acceptance. I think that's when I finally understood. The experiment isn't about breaking us, it's about teaching us to break ourselves. It's about creating a system so complete, so total, that resistance becomes unthinkable, not because we can't resist, but because we've forgotten why we would. The Vault doesn't need locks or guards or threats, it just needs us to believe there's no alternative. And we do. We believe it completely. Because we were raised to believe it, tested to reinforce it, shaped by every interaction and observation and consequence until the belief became part of our structure. I am 14. I am 37 years old. I have lived my entire life inside this vault. I have never seen the sun. I have never breathed unfiltered air. I have never made a choice that wasn't already accounted for in someone's research protocol. And I never will. The Vault provides. The Vault protects. And I help it do both. That's what they made me for. That's what I am.